Hello and happy Monday, cycling, form, and fitness coached athletes. Uh, the weather's not very good today, so I'm taking a little break from training, doing chores outside, whatever the day brings. And what I'm doing is reflecting back on this past weekend's event that we did at Yard Park. Many of us were able to do the bike run, and I wanted to provide a little deeper dive into that via a bike analysis and a run analysis, just so that we keep learning together and some points that might not be 100% clear get clarified. So as always, you can send me a message if you have any specific questions. Facebook Messenger works great. Text is also fine. The phone, as far as using it as an actual phone, it's not so good because of all the telemarketers and different calls we get. I hardly ever answer my phone. But if you let me know you're going to call, we can definitely set something up to talk. I understand some people prefer that. So moving on to the analysis. And I'll start with the data that's my own because I know I can share this. I went into yesterday's session with a target for power. Typically I do this and I do it for you guys before races, but I do it before I have any kind of serious or significant training event. So this is a race simulation for me. I set my target goal at 270 watts. That was what I had my FTP set at. So I thought that was a good starting point because FTP should be what you can do for 60 minutes. And this ride took about 43 minutes. So started at 270. The range, I go with plus or minus 10% for bike. So that for me was a 240 as a low and 300 as a high. And you can see those, the target and the ranges as the black lines on the graph. The purple line's the actual power output. A little bit of an interesting story there. I thought my power meter battery was dead. I started this ride with just heart rate, and by the time I got to the first turn on 144, I looked down at my watch, and sure enough, I had power. So I kind of overshot my target early on. Kind of shows you how these things can go wrong without having data. I used my heart rate, and my heart rate was hovering about 143, so I thought that was pretty good. But I was clearly overshooting my power zones. Um, and so I started to go more by what my plan was for my ranges, stayed within that for the rest of the bike. And I think I had a really successful bike, a little bit higher in power than I thought. My average power was 278. My normalized power was 281, partially because of that hard start. But my average heart rate was 138. This is like day 3 or 4 of a training block for me. So average heart rate was in the dumps and was somewhat useless. The variability index is an interesting number to watch on your data also. For mine, it was 1.01. And where that comes from is it's comparing normalized power to average power. Normalized power is inflated because of the spikes, but it's a number that would be what your body's truly experiencing because of the variation. So my body experienced power about 281, even though the average was 278. So again, that variability index is a factor of those two numbers, and it's 1.01. Intensity factor was also interesting, 1.01. That means I went 1% over my current FTP setting of 270. So when I got back home, I know my FTPs went up slightly. I moved it up to 280 based on this 43-minute effort. And we have that test on Saturday of this week at Yard Park to reestablish our FTPs. Outside, it's not uncommon to get an extra 10 watts or so. So it's a good time for us all to test if you can make it on the Saturday morning. And if that gets rained out, we'll do the FTP test on Sunday. So moving on, I also have Suzanne's data. I'm going to share that next, but this is my data on a different program. It's WKO4. I just added this in here in case you wanted a better look at the graph. I think WKO4 makes a prettier graph, but same data, same story. And then Suzanne's data for the bike, she had a goal of 150 watts, about plus or minus 10 puts us at 130 to 170, being the range I want her to stay in. And what she actually achieved was that her average came in at 140, her normalized at 145, creating a variability index of 1.04. So a little bit more variable, but still within what I consider to be good. Variability index for a time trial effort, a steady, hard effort, like a race effort, I tend to not want to see that over 1.05. If it's much over 1.05, I'm looking at reasons why. Maybe someone struggled because they had too much fatigue. They weren't really steady up the hills. They weren't really steady down the hills. It was a windy day and they were backing off power every time they got a side wind. Those things will happen, and variability index of 1.05 or higher gets me looking for the reasons why. Her heart rate was controlled, 144 beats per minute average, no problem there. And her intensity factor was 93%, so 93% of her FTP, which was good. We wanted to be at about 95%. So we'll consider that to be on target. Moving on, let's do the run quickly. Same sort of thinking. So I had a goal of 275 watts. The run target needs to be a little tighter, so I used plus or minus 15. So my goal was to keep my variability in between 260 to 290. My average power ended up being 280, slightly higher, but within the tolerance. Normalized power came in at 281. So I did run a lot harder than I targeted. I think it's just feeling like a race simulation had me a little overly excited. But my average heart rate was still good at 153. I maxed out about 165 on the finish hill, so that was just fine. The variability index, 1.00. Again, spot on. Runs tend to have a little bit less variability, so I usually don't want to see more than 1.02, maybe 1.03. If we're up to 1.03, there's something going on again with pacing. If someone's overheating, they bonked, there's some sort of issue going on. They're not looking at their watch. You know, I really want people that train with power to be looking at their watch every 10, 15 seconds. Just a little flick of the wrist is usually all it takes if you have power displayed on your watch. And I've turned my watch to the inside of my wrist for both bike and run. That way I can see it when I'm in the aero position and I can see it when I'm running. And when I'm climbing the hill on the bike, it's a little bit more of a challenge. But since I'm upright, typically climbing a steep hill, I can just kind of twist my arm inside and still see the inside of my wrist. So that's something you might want to try. So I do have one more slide to show, and that's Suzanne's run. I took off her zone 4 purple shading there just to kind of give you guys the graph and the targets that we set. Her target was 175, range was plus or minus 15. I used again 160 to 190. So keep it in between 160 and 190, and the target should end up being close to 175. She came in at 170, her normalized power 172. That creates the variability index of 1.01, which is perfectly fine. Average heart rate was 142, pretty controlled. She says she really had heavy legs though. She was feeling a tough work week, and I think that's why she came in just slightly under target. Intensity factor, again, probably wanted that to be about 0.95 and came in at 0.92. So great, solid work, especially considering that she had a tough work week. So hopefully you can look at your data in Training Peaks and get what you need by analysis. But if you have any questions, please reach out to me and I can run you through the same sort of review and feedback. It takes a little time to make a presentation like this. So for this particular session, I just used Suzanne's data and my own. So thanks for coming along for the ride. If you missed anything on that, you can probably rewind this and watch it again. And if not, ask me questions and I'll give you the answers the best that I can. So looking forward to time trial Saturday if you guys can make it. Sunday is the rain day. And if not, well, you can always do your own test out at Yar Park. The course is ready to go. Thanks. Bye-bye.